Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Danova, and I'm representing Nicanor. Nicanor is a vet center, vocational education training center in Sofia, in Bulgaria. And we are a board member of Letharin, which is an international association of organization. We are now and today we are here in order to implement our next webinar. And Professor Liliya Terzieva is here to lead the topic and the webinar. So she will present more about it, about the green skills. I want to thank you, Liliya, that you accept our invitation and that you are part of our webinars. Just to present that we already record and implement a couple of them. So they are uploaded in the Letharin website and also in our social networks. I could give you now the floor to you, just to stop sharing. The webinar is recorded, this one as well, so it will be uploaded after it also into the website of our network. Good. And now I will start to share the webinar online in Facebook. Liliya, now it's you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Maya. Hello, everyone. More than glad to see you here, and being here with the Letharin Network is always more than a pleasure and a great honor. One kind excuse, technicalities are always some small issue. We've been trying to have it properly on a slideshow appearing on your screens, but you will be seeing it now a little bit smaller than you're used to, and with the slides next to. Hopefully that won't disturb the conversation that we will be having now within this webinar, neither the contents that you will be able to scroll through later. So that is just shortly. Very proud to be talking about a topic which is so contemporary. It is a topic that is impossible to only dive into for the amount of time we will be having in the webinar, but hopefully this will already trigger your interest and curiosity, and also guide you towards more in-depth knowledge to really realize what on earth are these green skills and why are they relevant for where we live today. Maya already introduced me, nothing more needed to be said, and let us dive into the topic, because green skills is an ocean of opportunities, but it really also gives us some challenges which are good to be tackled from the beginning as much as we are aware of those. Having said that, I would like to shortly present some small agenda, you see, with a question mark, because the moment we start talking, there is always something more that can be said. So this will be more of a structure, and later on you can also, of course, refer to it if you watch it further. But let's first see why green skills, what's the importance behind them, who came up with the idea of having green skills as a terminology introduced by many diverse international institutions, not just within the scope of the European Union. Then we will look into the green skills landscape, because they are not living on one silo or on one island, if you imagine. They are very much adjacent to everything else that is surrounding us. Then we will look into the sector-specific needs and some case studies, because it's also interesting, and especially for our Letharin network members who come from many diverse contexts, not just national contexts, but also operational ones and business ones. We have to see where then green skills make any impact or have value. And then we can talk a little bit about the co-design and sort of an interactive discussion, although within a webinar. That is always a little bit difficult, and we have people live, but we also have, of course, people further on watching. Having said that, let's move. Why green skills? If we really try to keep something at the back of your minds, where you say to yourself, green skills, what was that? How can I depict it in one sentence, in one very short phrase? Please try to really relate to that. These are competencies. So it is not just the skills, it is the knowledge, it is the attitude, it is also these kind of very much tangible skill that you are mastering. So it is more a competency that we are referring to when talking about green skills. So that is also misleading. You think, okay, green skills and suddenly competences. But yes, it is much more appropriate to say competencies which are required to support a transition to a green economy. Here we have already two other terms that appear in the sort of the essence of what green skills are. First is transition. Talking about transition is also very fashionable. I would even call it sexy, because nowadays in everything we read about, in everything we dive into, all of it is about transitions. So let's be honest. We started 20 years ago talking about change. When we talk about change, change is something people resist to. It comes in naturally. The moment we relate to change, usually change is something which is being imposed top down. So but somebody says it has to be from now on like that, we follow. Yet we live in a world where we are not so easily following anymore. Although let's not look into geopolitical situations. This is something outside our webinar. But in general, we have grown to such type of humankind that we question our behavior. We question the activities of others. So change is not sufficient. Then, 10 years ago, we started talking more and more about transformation. And within transformation, we are already taking a little bit the approach of the top down, as well as introducing the bottom up. And when we talk about bottom up, then we see participation. Then we see people being eager. Then we see people who are really working towards making something happen, also because they would like to see it changed and different. Yet, the moment we stepped into the 21st century, and especially somewhere around talking about 2010, 2011, and then moving to the pandemic 2019, 2020, transitions started appearing not only on the arena of, you may say, research, you may say studies, you may say diverse implications coming from policy documents. No, it started really with the businesses, because the businesses realized, yes, change is needed. Yes, transformation is slowly happening, not at the pace that we would like it to happen. But transition is actually when we are witnessing behavioral change, when really something from within is no longer A or B. It is C, it is D, it is unexpected and unforecastable, so to say. So we are really talking about that. Green skills being the competencies required to support, to help, to enhance, to empower. Any here of these words is applicable to be used. These type of transitions. And then in this case, what kind of a transition? A transition to a green economy. So economy, very easily you may think of that nature and how we are depleting the resources our planet has. It is a little bit, it has become unfortunately more of a cliche of window dressing, green and brainwashing for all of us to believe that, from now on we just separate our waste and that is sufficient. From now on we travel predominantly by train, that's sufficient. We move completely to electric cars, that's sufficient. Certainly, these are some of the conditions which help this transition to happen. But the competencies are what we know, what we are able to do, and it is our attitude, it's our behavior towards that. So at some point, if this transition is successful, so we have those green skills, then it is no longer even needed to talk about it. It becomes per default. So we carry that within ourselves, this so-called green nature. So with such an introduction of almost 7 minutes, and I know Maya is very strict on our time, I just wanted to say the following. These are definitely the competencies we need if we want to make something happen, especially predominantly if we want our planet to continue surviving. I know that some of you may smile and think, yes, now we have already discovered that there is a probability, and maybe not only just probability to live on Mars, yet that is a bit further in time. And we have already been fully aware, because we live on this planet Earth, that it is completely suitable to our needs. So let's do a little bit more to help this process continue and not immediately thinking and giving up on what we have to move to the planet of Mars. So, green skills, green competencies. Which are the elements of these green skills? First, and very important one, very much of a foundational, so to say, knowledge, is to understand sustainability. Sustainability is something that is also very much spoken of in English, and it is very interesting. I would like you to think, because I know we have a very international audience with these webinars and with everything that Let Corinne does, it's interesting to immediately say this word in your own language. How does it sound? Does it incorporate exactly what we say when we say it in English, sustainability? And because we've done a little bit of research on that, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be asking you to do it, you would realize that in English, the word itself and language is very important, because language is what we have to communicate with each other. No other natural living creature, although you may now also argue with me, birds are singing, so that's their language. Animals are also voicing it out and articulating, but we don't understand it. So the way that we understand each other and we communicate is language. So it's very important when you use a specific word, what's behind its roots. And you will discover that in every language, it found its translation, its meaning, the way it's incorporated, even stronger than what sustainability does in English. Because to sustain something is to keep it going, to keep its duration longer than what maybe initially it was prescribed to. So this sustainability is something, that's why it was chosen that to be the term in English, not just because that's how it sounds in every dictionary you may find. It's the idea that everything we use now can be further on used by the generations to come. So we have to have the responsibility. Of course, we have all the rights. Everybody's now talking about human rights, but being a human and having specific rights, we also have responsibilities and duties. And one of those, when it comes to green economy, to green skills, to sustainability, is to make sure there is something left for the next generation to also continue living, not to overconsume. And what is also interesting to mention immediately here, talking about sustainability and green skills, we are always taking the two extremes so that people easily try to imagine. One is the concept of consumerism. So the more, the better, the more, the better, the more luxurious, the happier we are, versus the concept of sufficiency. What I have is enough. And if it is covering the needs I have, and I'm not talking about going to the caves back and really living the way people used to live, we know the dangers that now we can, of course, predict and do something about and tackle differently. But to really realize, what is it that makes us still feel happy, fulfilled, enjoying the life on our planet, and still be sufficient? So this is also something which green skills carry along with this understanding behind sustainability. But in order to be green skill competent, then you need to have a good awareness of sustainability and what it means in all possible sectors that you have anything to do with. Of course, otherwise it becomes an ocean and you can't swim in it. Then there comes the second point of these elements behind green skills: using eco-technologies. And when we talk about eco-technologies, I just referred to waste separation, then this is also a way that we can talk about introducing some technologies in order to separate our waste better. Some countries are a little bit more advanced in that, other countries are still followers. In general, of course, it requires specific resources to do that digitized, to do that in an electronic way so that you have an app on your phone and it reminds you on what you have to do. Of course, you may say, yeah, eco-technology, waste separation, using more train travel, etc. This is something we can again impose top down. And you're right, because that is usually the most efficient. Why? Because if there would be a fine behind it and you have to pay a specific amount, you start immediately being very considerate. Yet, that is not sustainable, talking about sustainability. That is not durable, we may even say in this case. Why? Because the moment this regulation is out of the picture, you continue doing the way you used to do before these fines were introduced. You go back to your old patterns. There is no behavioral change. You stop separating it because it makes your life a little bit more complicated. I agree. It makes your life a little bit more complicated to use all the time train travel. And then you go back to the beginning. So imposing something top down is a short term solution. And understanding and using eco technologies is more than that. Certainly, we need some policies. Certainly, there are frameworks and regulations which exist on that, and we have to be aware of those, but they are not the universal truth, neither the panacea. And then fostering circular thinking. It's my favorite because this element really requires from us to step into our responsible shoes, to take the steering wheel, and really be decisive on how do we live our life. And to foster this idea behind circularity, I'm going to refer to that in a bit and talk really about reuse, recycle, rethink, regenerate. Because all these yeah, it makes us do something repetitive, obviously, but it makes us also reflect. Okay, where can we foster that thinking? Do we really do like that? We see something fashionable while walking on the main street. We say, I don't have this color of a t-shirt. That's now in fashion. I am getting it. Yes and no. How many t-shirts do you already have? Is this new color as important as, yeah, maybe skipping on that this time, etc. So small things which already you are aware of. Going back to swapping. Yeah, now it's very popular to have talking about fashion, all these clothes swapping. It happens at any possible institution you may think of, starting from a university, kindergarten, going to business associations and NGOs. And everybody says, all right, that's fantastic. And go back to Finland and use the examples, for example, of everything they have from 0 to 3.5 on websites, structured, I mean, age of children and babies. And there, everything is on swap. Everything is circular. Everything is to be reused because basically these little creatures, they would need something for even less than a month, sometimes not even. And then it can be definitely reused, rethought, and yeah, made differently. So that kind of a circular thinking, starting from the basics and then going to what your company may need, to what your sector then requires to continue moving with the speed that we see. It's interesting because often we give as examples countries from Europe and where we stand because we are within Europe, but yet we have to also look into some very interesting examples in Southeast Asia and China. And they're talking about fostering circular thinking. You may say, yeah, in their case, we talk about mass production. They do not have any lack of human capital. So in their cases, sustainability does not come so often in the picture. Contrary to that thinking and to that initial association we may have, they are already very far. And if we talk automotive production, because we see Europe unfortunately moving a bit behind in this automotive production, then we see Southeast Asia making giant steps exactly because of this circularity thinking, of really rethinking, reusing, regenerating those resources they have, and recycling anything that you may think of. So then, why grain scales and why are they relevant if these would be their essence and these would be the elements they entail? They are definitely essential for us to meet all these international goals, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, such as the policy on the EU Green Deal. And you may read there, oh, by 2030, and where are we now? 2025, halfway through. How far are we? And then it's a bit shocking, it's a bit worrisome, it's a bit troublesome. We are not as far as we thought we would be. And the Sustainable Development Goals by no means entail what we just gave as very basic examples behind circularity. They really entail rethinking sectors such as education, rethinking sectors such as finance, construction, because I have a fantastic colleague working in the smart built environment, and he often tells me, we are supposed to be characterized as an industry, construction, built environment by smart, sustainable, really thinking strategically ahead, the so-called 3S, but we are all the time characterized by, unfortunately, dirty and dangerous, which are the 2Ds. And so what are we then talking about? Sustainable Development Goals and EU Green Deal, if we wouldn't be having these green skills, these green competencies. So having said that, and moving towards that, of course, and green skills, we need to also be aware of what does it mean in terms of transition towards a circular economy. And the circular economy is one step before the regenerative economy, which I'm going to touch upon very shortly as well, because it is good when talking about green skills to not limit ourselves only to the foundations of what I was just explaining, but to go a little bit behind this logic of the thinking, this logic of what I said, the transition. And that transition to green economy is also a transition to complete circular economy. And how can we do that? Because you may say, okay, from now on, everything recycle, from now on, everything reuse, rethink, regenerate. And it's not enough. Because these will be definitely steps that are made very logically and very much into operation. But do we maintain the value? Where is it where we can start from scratch? Where is it where it makes sense to deplete more resources, but in a long term for that to bring more value? And I will give you an example. Recently, we had a very interesting meeting in Brussels with the European Commission, again, towards talking about, because now it's very important, at least within the European Union, to get to construction which is affordable for people to start living in and really making sense of their lives. You see it as a very big problem because now the youngsters are facing incredible difficulties and challenges. So affordability is key. And what they said, as well as talking about construction, as well as talking about agriculture and organic farming and biodiversity and biomimicry, etc., they were saying the following. Yeah, we need to go to bio-based materials. In bio-based materials, you may think of anything, but let's start woods and everything that can be produced from our forests and woods. And then they say, look, we have the technology to really be growing forests, woods, in less than 7 years' time, so that the wood can be directly usable for the house building. However, 85 years from now, if we start doing that, the soil that these woods, these forests have been growing onto will be unusable for anything that we may imagine. So, can we maintain the value? No. We can, if we look only short term, 80 years from now, 85 maximum, they said, fantastic. Most of us who were discussing that won't be living anymore. Do we care? Of course we care. Because going back to the sustainability and the next generations, we said that was key, right? We said we need to be not depleting these resources of our planet in that way. So we have to question every technology, eco-technology that comes along the way. Because bio-based materials is a solution. To what extent is it a long-term sustainable solution is a different question. So such things are continuously being discussed when we talk about this circular economy thinking. Then reducing waste, I'm not going to discuss anymore because there I think we really did not do what we were supposed to do from the beginning as humankind. And we are still thinking that the moment it's out of our sight, it's out of the picture. But unfortunately, then it's moved into countries, into continents where people are completely suffering from. So this is something that we have to tackle almost immediately. Talking about circular economy thinking and this transition of the green skills supporting it, we need also to talk a lot about boosting competitiveness. And here you may wonder, in a world where we talk more about social innovation, collaboration and participatory processes, where does competitiveness come in play? And we have to look into everything of that really adjacently coexisting. Why? Because in order to progress, we very well know everyone is striving to be better, to be different, to be unique, to bring something that is of more value to the market. That doesn't mean we live in a red ocean. A red ocean was for something 25 years ago. We live more into these blue, yellow oceans, as called by all these different scientists. And they are really triggering this idea for us to come up with startups, to really rethink the value and rethink the way that we can boost that, not in the idea of killing everyone else on the market, but of sustaining this spirit, entrepreneurial spirit we have. And of course, circularity is meant to be, and this is what green skills are giving us as well as foundational knowledge and also foundational skills and attitude, is how do we then bring all these three values together: economic, social, environmental. Because economic value is clear, it has always been there. We exist because profit is important. And whoever will tell us now, from now on, disregard profit and the only holy grail is purpose. I question. And I question tremendously because that is not what can make us more competitive. That is not what will bring more technology and eco-technology. That is not what will maintain value in general and per se. And of course, having the economic value, we need to create this balance where profit and purpose again coexist. And this purpose is the meaning behind the profit you generate. And it is the meaning by means of which you can also have environmental gains. So it is much more complicated than just reducing the waste, than just taking more fashion differently, than just recycling everything we may think of or traveling by train. And this is where this regenerative lens comes in. And with the regenerative lens, always when you think about a regenerative lens, try to think about this idea of really stepping into healing processes. It may now sound a little bit meditative and mindfulness, and where we are talking about green skills, but that is exactly where we are very lost as humans. Because what we live in is pace, exponential pace we were never used to. Everything is dynamic, everything had to happen yesterday, everything is now and not anymore to wait for. But that's not how humankind came to exist. That's not how nature teaches us. If we go to the natural components of what our planet offers us, with every resource we may think of, I'm not going to go back to the elements like water, earth, etc. That is, of course, very foundational from where we look into, for example, Asia, and it is not without a reason. But I would like you to think of that. We used to have 4 seasons. We used to have 2 seasons. We used to have a season where rain was appearing and disappearing. And all of that was with the idea of giving birth anew, giving a new start, giving a new push on the button that we may go into something which we call peace and serenity and then start all over again. And imagine if this button is completely on. If this button doesn't have a moment on which to go back to your thinking and say, what did I do? Can I reflect upon that? Yes, it was a victory, fantastic. I go to the next one to make it a victory of as well. But is this what makes us healed from within, to hold the space, to act, to really surface this openness for emergence, as you see on the slide. So that you're really alert for this possible competitive entrepreneurial spirit that may come to you. And regeneration is no wonder relating to love, relating to courage, relating to balance. So this is as well something that is embedded very strongly in the green skills. This idea of realizing that in order to achieve a transition to a green economy, that has to be in place. We have to allow the resources to go back as the trees we see with having those fantastic blossoming leaves, then the different blossoms and bringing them to fruits, then the fruits in the harvest, and then the autumn and the winter of the leafless trees that we are experiencing. And that is very similar to us as humans when we go through these continuous cycles all the time. This is also part of that. And it is part of also businesses realizing that they have these different S curves. Yes, they move from one invention and discovery to another. But in these moments of rethinking, the balance is what has to be established as well, the so-called stability. If we talk about science, this would be the management of dissipative structures that Ilya Prigogine refers to. And in every dissipative structure, we can compare it to a cocktail. We are now in the summer. If you would like to make a cocktail, you start with a few ingredients. And those ingredients, in order for the cocktail to taste nice, you need to shake it. And this shaking is exactly this turbulence we go on a daily basis through. And then the moment it's shaken, then we wanted to take a little bit of a recombination, as it is called. So we don't say, oh, initially these ingredients were tasting better when they were separate. No, we don't look back and say it used to be a lot better. Certainly there were better elements. Let's keep them into this new cocktail. And then it goes to stabilization. You put the straw, you have your beautiful lemon or whatever fruit next to that. And that is it. You need this balance to happen, even if we translate it to simple things like a beautiful cocktail. And only one more add-on before we go to the specifics of the different types of green skills, and this is the impact of collaboration. So how can we enhance the decision-making processes when we have these participatory processes taking place adjacently next to what we do, including all these stakeholders, engaging them as much as possible? Because at the end of the day, if we all let her in, no matter how many we are, and we are not a few, we decide from now on, we will act from a green skills perspective. We will do and we will write projects and we will implement different activities and also coming up to new ventures and new eco-friendly behavioral types of inventions and also ways of dealing and doing, that it will not be sufficient. Because again, we need these to happen as an avalanche effect, as a snowball and triple effect. And then we need these holistic solutions. What works for us, and although it is in one industry, can be rethought differently in another. What is then legitimate? For example, we say we live in the European Union, we live in Europe. Europe is one of the 6 continents. That is our Earth. How can we bring different policies across so that they are not a copy-paste, but they bring the value of this green economy further and with a very logical thought of what can be used by the next generations? Conflict resolution, again, I am sounding a little bit more wishful and optimistic in a world which is full of conflicts that cannot be easily resolved. But conflict resolution is also part of this circular thinking, of this foundational element of the green skills, because it allows us to look at conflict also differently. It allows us to look at similarities before we dive into differences. It allows us to really create and innovate together because of our differences and because of our aspiration to make a solution out of that, even if it is contextual and not to go into problems. I think this is a very important slide that needs to bring across this message. If we talk green skills, the idea behind green skills and the idea in general behind the transition towards a green economy is for us to look from a mindset that is not problem-based, but solution-oriented. And if we manage to do that, there is always a way out. And I'm not saying, from now on we sing Kumbaya, we dance, and that is it. No, but from now on we have another complementary view on that. And that is what basically and intrinsically lies in where green skills stem from. Defining green skills, going a little bit more now to the actual probability of what you can or can't do. These are really knowledge, values, and abilities needed for sustainable living and working. This is what we have to have. We have to know how it is because you don't know what you don't know, and then you can't do anything about it. It comes from your own values. Everybody of us lives with certain values, understands certain things. Of course, if we are people like minded, it's easier. If we have different values and we explain to each other, it is still okay. It is still possible. And we need abilities. Of course, it is impossible to think that once we read it, once we talk about it, and then we are fully aware of implementing it in practice. There are abilities that certainly have to be in place. And all of these three are needed for us to live in a sustainable way and to work in a sustainable way. There are three main categories of green skills. Technical, so these are pure technical solutions and technologies, like renewable energy systems, like renewable resources and what we do with that. As part of that, of course, are electric cars. As part of that are the digitized technologies behind waste separation. As part of that are also all these technical solutions that come in the way we build, in the way we educate, in the way we communicate now virtually together, etc. And this allows us not to deplete any resources, obviously. Then transversal ones. Transversal ones are such ones such as systems thing. Okay, we cannot look into one thing existing on its own. If we take a mug and we drink a cup of tea, this mug is not existing outside all the production of different ceramics, of the way that this ceramics is being baked, into the coloring of the different ceramics, and you name it. All of that is always into a context where everything is connected to everything. And the moment we realize that, we know that even if we think, okay, Tom's shoes, fantastic example. You buy one pair of shoes is being donated. But if it is donated to Bangladesh, I'm really sorry, but you go to Bangladesh, what do you see? Heaps of mountains of shoes that are non-usable because people do not need as many shoes. They need as much as they can use. So that is not solving the issue. And nothing against any company that has such type of a thinking, but it is more than that because we live in a system. We spoke a lot already about collaboration, and this is where these type of green skills come into play, these transversality. And the transformative category, which is, for example, leadership for change. The transformative leads very much to this transitioning that I spoke of, where we activate the people, where we together really start making sense out of that and move forward. So remember, technical, transversal, transformative, and knowledge, values, and abilities that we need for this sustainable living. Okay. It would be wonderful. Now we will not be going into this plenary discussion, but the people who are here, I'm seeing you also starting to think. I'm seeing you also, starting to make sense of that and immediately imagining the scenarios in your context. Think of that. What are the green skills that are already being applied in your work sector? If this would be education, as Maya was talking about Nicanor when introducing in the beginning, being part of the board membership, and also let her in as a network. In what way are already green skills being applied in the way we work, in the way we generate what we generate as value? What is missing? What can we do maybe differently and maybe better? And then think of one technical, one transversal, one transformative green skill, which is relevant to your context, already existent, and relevant to your context, and you are really aspiring to embed it somehow, apply it a little bit, and get a taste and test of it. This is also important because sometimes there are all these ready-made solutions, right? And you say, oh, okay, from now on, I am going to go towards that, especially when talking about artificial intelligence and talking about all the modifications of ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude AI. Let me not continuously make further advertisement. But what I wanted to say with that is we type something, we get a response, we do not think, we put it somewhere, the job is done. How much have we used as resource? If we would look just behind the electricity that this is consuming, what does it mean? At the same time, you may argue, and that is where you see the balance. What if 12 people were working on that for 6 months? They needed to gather together. They needed to also be paid. They would need to be educated to do that, what you have received out of whatever chatbot source in half a day. Yeah, of course, then you're balancing it out. But all of that has to have a thought behind. And if it does, if the promptology, as now this is a new science entering this business of the chatbots, is also some sort of an eco-friendly way of us doing that, fantastic, let's do it. But let's have really the reflection. We are humans, we reflect, we think into what makes sense and what is just a copy-paste, which doesn't add any value, let alone provoke competitiveness and entrepreneurial spirit. Talking about green skills landscape, it is really something that is a bit of everything again in the system. First are the labor market trends. So our labor market is very intense. Our labor market is now questioned and challenged a lot exactly because the generative and the artificial intelligence, what is going to stay, what is not, who is going to eat up our jobs, yeah, all these questions. One comforting thought, please, I was not yet witnessing there, but we as humankind, we were going through the Industrial Revolution in the 1960s. Everybody was saying then, oh, from now on, manufacturing will kill everyone who does handcraft. I'm sorry, did not happen. Beginning of 21st century, 3D printing. From now on, everything. Healthcare, oh, there will be a heart printed. Who cares? Now we don't need to study medicine the way we used to. Did that happen? Yeah, of course, it is very much of a supportive technology. Yes, all of that is happening, but it wasn't killing anyone. We are still on the labor market existence. Same goes for artificial and generative intelligence. Certainly, it's very different. Why? Because if we talk industrial revolution and if we talk 3D printing, then these are handmade aspects. So what we can do with our hands, whereby the artificial and the generative refers to our minds. And then suddenly we are very scared. Somebody can think better than we can. Somebody can have the whole knowledge that we will never be able to have. That is definitely a scary thought. Yet, the way that imagination works, the way that creativity happens, is so human. So I am absolutely at a comfort, at least until this moment, that there are still people needed to make sense out of what is coming, which is very automated, for sure fantastic. I am absolutely loving social robots who are now next to the dementia people, and they are able to repeat one and the same 212 million times without losing the smile on their faces. And that I'm very happy for, because we humans cannot be as productive and as resilient. But there are certainly aspects which need to happen because of it. So having said that, labor market trends and green skills with everything that is there is as well the landscape. International frameworks. What you can read about green skills in all the policy documents. I really invite you, if you want to dive more into, look into the CEDEFOP policy. So this is really encompassing everything that has to do with professional, vocational, formal, non-formal education. Check the International Labour Organization. They have a fantastic report. I'm going to share, of course, some resources and references for all of you to dive into. And check UNESCO, this United Organization for Education, Social, Cultural Policies, is really something which tries to bring this idea of green across, and predominantly from already the first cradle, so to say, until the moment we learn for our lifelong, is the idea of how do we embed it in the way that we behave. And I'm seeing it more and more with children nowadays. They are much more eco-minded. It is not because somebody told them, it is because they have heard of that, they are experiencing it on a daily basis, and they start acting differently. Then green skills is also something which is bringing a huge demand for reskilling and upskilling. I can talk about myself. I am someone who is used to specific rituals and patterns, which I know I have to unlearn. And that unlearning is a very difficult process. To learn something new is much easier than to unlearn. You need 60 days of a repetitive ritual, and then it becomes part of your habit. But nobody tells you, what do you do to reverse the process? So these reskilling and upskilling together with unlearning is where green skills are basically needed all the time. So we have to do something about it. And because of what is happening now with these transitions, with these sustainability, regenerative, and circular approaches, we are identifying many gaps, many mismatches, because you enter into an organization, and if you are already wearing your green skills hat, you're immediately detecting things which you say, aha, here is what can be done differently. Not here is the problem. We would like to change that. As we said, look into solutions, not the problem, but what can be done differently. Let's look now into some sector specifics. I know we have 10, 12 minutes left. So green skills in vocational education and training. Where can we bring them across? Curriculum integration. It's not difficult. We can do that. One thing, because I'm an educationalist myself, I really believe it shouldn't be a separate module, because people are having this so-called fatigue, exhaustion of sustainability modules. Incorporate it into existing ones. Try to make sense out of that into the science, into the object, subject, major itself, minor, whatever that is. So integrate them into what is already there. Allow workplace learning, because when you're on the job and you're in that construction site that I just mentioned, and you see how dirty, dangerous, now you pass by, I am not a specialist, but because we have certain projects in that domain as well, and I have, of course, fantastic people who are experts in that. They tell me, look at that, Liliya. If we go back 120 years in time, it looked the same way. What did we change about that? Where is these green skills coming up? What is it that, sustainable building, bio-based, affordability, what do we do about it? Training trainers. If our people, because it is also often a thing, when we talk about vocational education, when we talk about education in general, we are questioning what's in the material, in the content, but we kind of omit this idea of, okay, who are the people who bring this knowledge across? Who are the people who have to really give this new mindset and generate and radiate it further? And they are not prepared. And I don't blame them, because they have to do a lot on their own and really kind of, reskill, upskill themselves. Yeah, but we need to do something there. Because if they would feel comfortable, they will pick it up. Otherwise, they go back to the old rituals I told you. And industry collaborations. There are industries, thanks God, this is something I'm very happy about. 25 years ago, different disciplines were not talking to each other. If you would be an anthropologist, talking to someone who comes from psychology, forget about it. Their methods are for them. Our methods and our science frameworks are for us. Now, also with different sectors. If we talk machine building, there is no wonder that they are interested in the tourism sector. If we talk about construction, there is no wonder they are interested now in climate justice. So now everything is talking to each other. And these collaborations are really these abilities for us to see this cross, multi, interdisciplinarity come to the picture. Let's make use of that and really have these partnerships. I know all our lecturing members are already doing that, and embedding these green skills more and more in these at least 4 areas will be fantastic. If we talk about NGOs, because we have members as well who are non-governmental organizations and really are there for some specific purpose on lobbying on a specific sector or on a voluntary work for others or on youth sustaining, etc. And here, the enhancing of the effectiveness with green skills is very important as well. How does it happen? It can happen through community engagement. And I think here we can go back again to Southeast Asia and take as an example Thailand. And what do they do with their communities? Sri Lanka and their resilience. There you will see that really people go back to the beginning. What is it there which is the power of the community? And that power of the community, they know it best. They know where they live. They know what this soil can give them back. They know how to organize housing. They are really catering, this South African proverb that for raising a child, a village is needed. Yes, that is where the community with the green skill steps in. Because now I'll give you another example from the Netherlands. positive energy districts. More and more, it is not just a Dutch invention. Positive energy districts across Europe, there is a specific program called Driving Urban Transition, which stimulates that. What is it? Simply said, where the community, a neighborhood, generates more energy than it can consume. It consumes its own, and then it can also bring to other neighborhoods the energy that they are able to generate. Positive energy districts are, of course, sustained by specific eco-green technologies. People who live there, of course, are questioning that tremendously. Is it going to be more expensive? Look what happened with the solar panels. Everybody was into solar panels. Now everybody is overproducing the consumption they need. But in order to bring it back to the electricity grid, now they have to pay. What do you think happens now in the Netherlands? People started removing the solar panels because they say, why on earth? I made such an investment. It costs me so much now, and I have to even pay to the grid. So then going back to what I wanted to say, we really have to think in the positive energy district, we need the community. Because without the citizens, those people who have to embrace it, no matter how tremendous our technology may look like, it's not going to be taken. Advocacy and education. Here, the NGOs as well have a very big, I would call it responsibility, not just the power and the rights to do that, because they can advocate on how this can be embedded into the policy frameworks, into changing the regimes. Because in education, we can do as much, but the NGOs, the networks, as let her in, these are really the game changers who can bring that to the advocacy. Local capacity building. This is really very much into the community again, but then with the capacity, with the sufficiency concept I was mentioning. And then implementing diverse projects which relate to the sustainability context. Because you may say, one will not change the picture. Yes and no, I agree with that, but one is already an intervention. And if you have one step made, then already something is there. We call that pilot, we call that experiment, because not everything can start from scratch together. There have to be these good practices, best practices, the reasoning for people to jump on the fast movers and really be on top of things. Talking about green skills in businesses. Here we talk really very much about business models because the business is interested into generating the three types of value where skill economic is the predominant, let's be honest. And they have to see that working. If they see it, if we bring more value with less capacity, they are on top of it. And then if that makes sense into circularity, of course, sustainable business models, circular business models. Green HR and recruitment. How do we hire people and how do we train them to step into these green jobs? Also something very interesting for businesses to tackle, to really become partners of those HR associations or those ways of recruiting. Compliance and sustainability reporting. This is a little bit the top-down. You have heard, I'm sure some of you are already busy with those integrated reports they have to submit on an annual basis where no longer just the financial figures are of value. You have to really show how every financial implication there was impacts what has happened within the environment you operate as a business and to the people and the social component. And more what happens, of course, partnership with education providers, with vocational education and training, adult training centers, university where need be, with the micro credentials, etc. So green skills are really as well very visible and very prominent to what we do in business as well. A few Dutch best practices because of the context, of course, we are in, and also interesting, I wouldn't just say that this is possible to happen within one country or within one context. For the circular economy, engagement spans in education, in NGOs and businesses. Philips, fantastic move because now from everything that used to be Philips, now we really look into what they have oriented themselves towards, and this is healthcare and lightning. So for them, they are really continuously introducing these innovation into boot camps, onto life cycles, and all these skills that are necessary for something which brings these generations forward in everything that they can introduce, these eco-technologies. If we talk about green skills for youth as an NGO, they are continuously all the time busy with these mobile labs on green entrepreneurship skills. So they move from region to region, from neighborhood to neighborhood, from province to province, and they educate really on the spot and alongside companies. And Eros and Mondrian, this is a vocational gymnasium, vocational school, vet center, we can call it. Yeah, the Dutch educational spectrum is a bit different. They are one of the leaders in integrating these circular economy modules and collaborating for internships and having this dual economy really live, not just be something on paper. Having said that, there are plenty of barriers that hold us back to green skills. I'm not going to go through that because I don't want to depict a doom scenario for you where it's really a mission impossible if we would have all these barriers. But all of that really relates to something basic, to really starting with the question of what's in it for us. Because let's also be honest, it's about being pragmatic. You would bring it in if it brings back something. And if that is the case, then all of these barriers suddenly become opportunities. And they are really the specifics where we can tap into more so that we can be of value. The members of Let's those who would be watching this webinar, to see, okay, in my own field, if this would be finance, and now I'm talking about accounting practices from the past, which were, of course, working when they were supposed to work, what can be different? What are these green skills that I'm needing to change this complete picture across? Then talking about green skills, we really see, and that is really the necessity that has to happen in educating ourselves, in becoming competent on that, is to look into how do we move from these degeneration, these over-consumerism, also including if we talk tourism, over-tourism, everything is over that we do. Somehow we as humans at some point became too greedy. Let's also be putting that on the table. We just want more. And really everything, because everything is starting being produced so easily. Everything is so easily accessible, also because it can be produced with low labor costs, with children whose wages are not being paid, with uncontrollable systems, and with a lot of energy. To move towards this completely regenerative living system design, being part of nature. We have as well colleagues within the university where I work, the Hague University of Applied Sciences, who are busy with biomimicry. And I'm going only to use 1 minute on that, and then I have some closing remarks. And I will say biomimicry is really something that will be of interest maybe for you to tap into, and could be a talk that we can establish later, is how does nature solve issues that we humans have to solve? For example, a very easy thing is looking and observing how seawater animals cope with cleaning a specific particle so that it is recycled. And because of what you see there, you can extrapolate it and bring it into a machine that is operational for human needs. So solutions are already there in the bio world that surrounds us. Let's see what we can make out of that, and let us not diminish the value of that. To modernize our Europe's economy. We are in Europe. I am really being European, find ourselves responsible to bring Europe a little bit more on the picture. Everybody is now referring to Europe being more, becoming more of a museum rather than an innovative field, an innovative, operational arena. Let's change that. And through green skills, it's really the way, through really establishing this idea of, not only digital, not only energy consumption, not only investments and capital, but really elevating this balance on innovation and imaginative power through circularity and regeneration is where green skills can move us further. So thank you very much for that. I'm always eager to discuss and have some questions in case there are. And if interested, also a QR code to some of our recent publications where you can find bits and pieces on green skills as well. But Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liliya. As you said, if there are some questions, some comments, some points that you would like to share now, the participants with us.
Yeah, Liliya, I just wanted to say thank you. It's always a pleasure to communicate with you, to listen to your webinars or presentations at our conferences. And I was thinking about your idea, about your concept of transition. I mean, changes as transitions. We are educators, and our idea, what we are aiming to do, that is motivate people to make changes.
Yes.
To enter the transition, to change themselves, starting with themselves, and then change the environment.
Exactly.
Can you, I was thinking about good practices because you have already mentioned some companies that are just doing good practices. Any good practices from your experience as a teacher, as a professor, as a lecturer at a university? What can we do to motivate people, to motivate our students?
Yeah. Thank you, Elena. Always a pleasure for me as well to be with you here. That's a very complex question. And I will say why. You already even said it in your question. The only thing we can do is change ourselves. It starts from us. If we are willing to change, we change. So, unfortunately, we cannot change others. That we know. Having said that, yet we can inspire them. And I think, and that is why I referred to this pragmatic way of thinking of our 21st century people, and especially Gen Z, Gen Alpha. These are really humankind, very different from me, who want to see what's in it, who are very much interested into balancing it out. So if we show them that this will really mean less hours, which are intensive work, more going back to this mindfulness spirit. If we show them that this really means a future that we all can enjoy, this could be the tipping point. Of course, there is no one blueprint that if we follow it, this will be the case. But what I have seen, certainly, and I think it really starts with us as educators. If we are doing that, if it is show by example, they follow. If they see our passion, they follow. If we bring them directly to companies, to diverse providers who already do something of that, they follow. So for them, it is very important now. They want to touch and see. It is no longer enough just to tell. So this at least works here. And I know it's very different because I am as well teaching at the University of Montpellier diverse courses. There people prefer more hearing it, looking into data, going into the statistics. So again, it's very diverse for the different target groups you have. Here in the Netherlands, it's more action. You have to see it, touch it, know it works, and then you go further. And then you dive into the science, whereby for others is a bit different. But I really believe it starts with us. And if we as educators believe in that, and it is not just being there to tick the box 9 to 5, then they see it can be done differently. And they follow.
Yeah, thank you, Liliya. I agree. I mean, you need to believe in it, and then the environment will also go in this direction. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. For me, it was really very interesting. The things that you shared, of course, the good practices. And also about the added values and etc. So, and how it could change our lives and using the green skill. So thank you very much once again.
Thanks.
I would
Right.
sorry, Vitlena.
I would like only to say that just as a confirmation of what Lilia taught and said before that, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I was invited from Lilia to attend in one workshop in Brussels And there was the first time when I learned so many things about the transformation and regenerative vision and green skills. And I was so inspired, so I tried to, I started to think how I can change my behavior. So it's really very important to inspire more people around us with our own behavior and with our own style of life. So thank you, Liliya, for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, dear all. Yeah, we stay connected, and if there is anything, we continue. Yes.
Yeah, definitely. We will stay connected. July, the event that is coming in July on the Let Her In network is the networking event in Konya. So there also Liliya will take active part. And about the webinar, July and August, I think that we will have time to rest and to think about our next topics. So keep informed, stay in touch, and from September we will continue with those webinars. Julia.
Yeah. So thank you both, Liliya, for the presentation, as always, very meaningful. I mean, and just food for thought. I mean, again, this is like trendy, I mean, fashionable words to use, but that is just, I will think about what you said. And Maya, thank you for organizing all of this and inviting all of us. Let's talk about the webinars. The next webinars also in Konya in July. And Liliya, looking forward for your presentation in Turkey. Very interesting topic, and as always, will be inspired.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I see one question in the chat.
Yes, yes.
How can we apply green skills in the area of education, specifically inclusive education in our education sectors? Yes, inclusive education. Actually, if you would look into the Sustainable Development Goals, you will see that inclusion is also a part where we have to work a lot towards implementing that by 2030. And if we talk about inclusive education, there are a few issues there because it's easily said, let's include every type of group. Yeah, there have to be equal opportunities for every group to really be part of education, and then learning from each other, being at different levels, coming from different contexts may mean a lot. Yet, we can only do that, and I always tend to say you can improvise only if you're 150% prepared. So coming to inclusive education is not just bringing diverse people together and calling that inclusive. That is only one step of inviting, of really acting towards participatory processes. But really relating to these green skills and making it inclusive, one interesting idea could be an intergenerational approach. So bringing different age groups together and bringing them into an interesting project. It can be based on very, very simple elements that you can introduce. For example, again, if we talk about travel or if we talk about sustaining a garden, and then every of these groups working together, splitting them into groups and then bringing these different generations together to come up with contextual solutions. It will be spectacular what they will achieve. And then you as educators can step into that picture and reflect together. All right, what came out of that? How these ideas brought up to each other? In what way did we learn to understand each other's perspectives on acting upon that garden or that sustainable train that they are coming from the future to think of? But again, going back to why do you do that? What's the meaning behind? So always starting with why would you like to do inclusive education? If you would like to do inclusive education with different levels, yeah, I gave the example of ages, but it could be different levels as well. What will it bring to every of the group and what will it bring to you as an educator? And then if it is green skills that you would like to bring across, I think it's fantastic because green skills then for the people, let's say like me, for people who are elderly, for people who are much younger or children, bringing them into that scope together will be of extreme value for people to really realize we look at the same thing, but we approach it differently. And if we would do that like this or like that, it would mean a lot. What's also interesting, talking about eco-technologies, green eco-technologies, and then the technical part, and you would like inclusive education there, it's a bit the example of what I gave of the positive energy district. From a technical perspective, people who talk the same language, they know immediately the benefit of that. But I am not a technical expert. Most of the people who will be in the neighborhood most probably won't be. They need to be included in that type of a training and education to understand the value. So there is a lot of impact, a lot of really positive benefit of doing that, but always start with, why do I do that? In what way do I want to bring green skills if this would be the core? Or in what way do I integrate it into the education, as we said, with curriculum integration, so that it can really spark something differently? I hope this answers a bit the question.
Thank you. Good. Is there something else, or we could stop recording and stop